gezien. We gaan zo met Anna en met Gabriel praten. Maar vanavond gaat het over het maakproces. En de derde maker, Julia, die is er vanavond niet bij. Maar ik neem toch even de mogelijkheid nu om wel te vertellen wat het proces is achter haar film. Haar film is een stop-motion poppenfilm. We zullen zo praten over wat andere technieken. En mensen zullen misschien afvragen, wat waren dat voor poppen? Dat waren poppen van siliconen gemaakt met een ijzeren skelet aan de binnenkant. Voor al die mensen die nieuwsgierig zijn naar de techniek. Maar nu gaan we naar Anna en Gabriel. Welcome, Anna and Gabriel. Nice to meet you. First of all, I'm going to ask you both some questions. Thank you very much for your movies. They were moving, intriguing, beautiful. But first, I would like to go to Gabriel. And I will get back to you soon. Gabriel, your movie, at first I thought it was more metaphorically, and during the movie it was struck with me, is it meant more literally about this anxiety that you experience going through the medical process? What can you elaborate on your idea behind it? Or is it both?
Yeah, maybe both. I don't really want to take away from somebody's interpretation in a way. It came about because I had an experience with an MRI myself, which is why it's the centerpiece of the film. A technician gave me a remote, just like in the film, and said, push this button if you begin to panic. And in the moment, I thought it was just the most beautiful sentence I'd ever heard, and it kind of sparked this idea for the film and for this main character's perspective on life and how he deals with this anxiety in a way. So yeah, maybe literal, but maybe not literal at the same time.
And how does the process go for you? Do you start writing, or do you start drawing? Do you storyboard the whole thing, or is it also more organically as with Anna?
This one was quite organic. Usually I'm quite regimented, where I'll write the script in full, then I'll storyboard in full, and then I'll animate in full. With this one, because the inspiration came so much from life, the inspiration came from little sketches I might be doing at the doctor's. So I have all these little sketches and just one sentence here and there. And so I wrote the script. And usually what I would do is I would do the storyboard and be quite strict about going from beginning to end. But with this, I kind of had the script and then would just look at it at the beginning of the day or the beginning of the week and say what inspires me today and where do I get some creative images. And so, I might be working on page 7 today and then page 2 tomorrow, and I had no idea what anything was going to look like. And so some of my favorite things in there are almost accidents, I would say.
Is that what it brings you, this freedom, that it surprises you, or what does it give you?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's a creativity. As Anna was saying, I think when we plan everything ahead of time, then we're trying to get those 12 frames done, and so we can do something else because it's that regimented. It becomes more about process. But then, if we don't know what's happening, I think we get surprised ourselves sometimes, and that creates this kind of beautiful momentum of creativity, maybe.
Mm-hmm. For our audience members who do not know what a storyboard is, then a storyboard is a representation in little thumbnails of the steps that you take in a movie, and it starts out quite roughly, and then you narrow it down, and then that's the blueprint of the movie. Gabriel, I also have one other question for you. Your movie is very flat, very graphical, really very much in contrast with a live-action movie that's much more eye-camera based, this perspective thing. Is that because I also know that you make art pieces and make illustration. How do you feel towards perspective, and how is it in contrast with the frame, or how does it work for you?
I guess I search for a visual idea, and working in the art world, oftentimes those visual ideas will come from there. And so, with the centerpiece of the film being this MRI, I early on had this idea of white on white layers because the MRI is completely white on the inside and it scans the body in layers. And from there, I was further inspired by an artist called Ben Nicholson, who had these white relief pieces, and that really then confirmed what I wanted to do, because there's such a power to white on white, because you end up looking at nothing but shadows in a way, because there's no lines. And I thought that was kind of a fitting metaphor for a story about somebody who has a illness which is not necessarily easily defined, and he's kind of forced to live in the shadows, so to say.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. I go back to Gabriel. I'm interested, you talked about those layers that were fitting this idea of the MRI, but then the cutting, and I also presume that you work with knives. You still show some of the rough edges. Was it ever an idea to use a laser cutter, or is it like, no, that's definitely not me?
Yeah, I guess that wouldn't, I wouldn't be against that, and I never want to say I wouldn't do something, but the technique felt wrong to use something that precise for something that is trying to convey someone's emotions and someone's perspective on the world. I guess that would have felt maybe a bit too clinical, and in a way it was a contrast to the clinical world, to show a lot of the frayed edges and things.
And for our perspective, how big are your pieces?
Very small sometimes. If you think about the film, the frame is a piece of A4. And if you think about some of my pieces, so this is a ladder. I don't know if you can see.
Oh, that's so sweet.
So that's very small. And then if you're changing perspective on a ladder, you have to keep the rungs the same. You can go a bit bigger. This is Bartholomew walking. Here he is when he's about to talk. Mm-hmm. So we have all sorts of different sizes, but yeah, everything had to fit within an A4, and I definitely lost a few years of eyesight from doing that.
And how did you make sure that things didn't start shifting, because you have different layers? It's very easy. Do you glue them? How do you keep them in place?
Oh, it's a combination of things. There is a bit of gluing and whatnot, but there's also a bit of digital compositing. So I never really worked on, two things moving in different places at the same time, because it gets messy so very quickly, and things just end up breaking. So yeah, I did touch almost every single frame in Photoshop and make sure it aligned perfectly, and also took out a lot of dust and things. And I was surprised how dusty my home is.
What will you be working on next?
I'm working on a series of short films, which I think is going to link up to maybe be a feature. It's going to be called Brouhaha. I read a story about these miners, which were they were very religious. I think they were Catholic, but they had this pact that whenever they go into the mine, they no longer worship God; they worship the devil. And I thought that was a fascinating concept for how beliefs can change depending on your circumstances.
Mm-hmm. And what time frame, or where did this took place?
I think it's still taking place. I believe it's in a mine in Peru that it's going on right now.
Okay. Thank you very much, Anna and Gabriel, for talking to us and enjoying our audience with your beautiful movies.